we have the unbelievable good fortune to have a phenomenal resident teacher and an amazing team that are doing really, really good work supporting the community. And so the body of students has been growing, and because we offer classes online, it's not just London, it's got international. And so we have these 3 concurrent multi-year program of students who are really, really deeply engaged. Some of you are involved in some of those programs, but it's been very inspiring because we, arriving here and thinking, will people respond to that level of commitment, having householders' life and jobs and this and that? And our experience in the last 4 years has been that actually the level of commitment is really high. And it's been so rewarding to support students and watch, and Geshe-la will talk a little bit about that. But, Venerable Wang Yao, who's our spiritual program coordinator and who's been with us for 4 years, so Geshe Namdak, myself, and Venerable Wang Yao have all been here 4 years working together. And so Venerable Wang Yao was sharing with me the other day how rewarding it is to actually see the transformation in the students. And so we've seen that, and that's, really, really inspiring. And so responding to that and saying, okay, how can we build on that and invest in Jamyang so that not just for this generation, but future generation, what's happening here can endure. And so there's been a lot of conversation about the home that we're in and how do we help this beautiful building that we have, that we're the custodians of, and help it basically meet the needs of this current but also future generation. And so in February I shared the trustee's been working with this phenomenal architect on helping develop a vision that would support the strategic vision of the organization. And so today I'm going to share some of those plans. And so since we last met in February, the board actually approved the plan and we are moving forward. And so in 5 years, we will celebrate our 50th anniversary. And so we're preparing to launch what will be, we're calling our 50-year appeal, to create the conditions and of course raise the funds to invest in the building so that basically it endures in the future. So I'll share with you some of those plans. So we started this process in June 2022. And we've been working with a wonderful architect. She was going to be here tonight and meet you. Fortunately, she had COVID, so she wasn't able to join, but her name's Cindy. And she's done amazing project, and she's really, really helped us and held our hand in this strategic visioning process to make sure that how we evolve the building actually really suits the strategic priorities of the organization. And so as we were going through this process, it really kind of helped us clarify and articulate really clearly, it's like, what are the challenges that we're experiencing with the building at the moment, and how do we have a forward-thinking vision for the building? And so what we'll share with you today is how does that translate into supporting the strategic plan that we have. So very concretely, and we tried to make the font bigger, but very concretely, some of the elements of this plan is, one, to make the building more welcoming and accessible to a more diverse range of people. And so those of you who've been involved in building may fathom or guess it's about having conversations like whether or not we have a lift. and it sounds really, how to say, detail, accessory, but it is about vision, and it is about values, and it is about, making sure that we have a more diverse range of people who can access the offices, the living accommodation where our volunteers are, our monastic quarters, so that we don't limit ourselves to who's able to interact in the building. The second one is sustainability, and it's environmental sustainability, it's financial sustainability, and so we'll talk about, how we're going to do that. And so, net zero is something that all organizations are grappling with, but organizations like Jamyang, who have, a historically listed building that's 100 years old, reaching net zero is a challenge, no question, and yet it's a necessity. So we'll talk about that. Creating 2 inner city green spaces open to all. So that's, the courtyard over there, and it's the North Garden over on the other side. And so those people who, a little bit know about the, the relationship between, how to say, social welfare and access to green spaces. And it's really, really poignant in urban development. It's areas that are more socially deprived that have less access to green spaces. And so Lambeth is one of those areas that I think is listed, and it's, I was quite shocked actually by that. It's one of the top deprived boroughs in the entire England areas. So how do we contribute towards making that more accessible to people? Number 4, establishing a long-term home for our urban monastic communities. So we now have 4 monastics living in the heart of the city, which we're so thrilled about, and we're hoping to have a few more. But how do we support those monastic to live in suitable accommodation, separate from lay people and so forth, and how can the building accommodate that? And the last one is providing office and learning facilities to support our expanding education program, and we'll talk about how we're hoping to achieve that. So we had these 5 strategic priorities, and I share that in February, so it's familiar. The photo that always brings a smile to our eyes when you see it is from the team. We had the good fortune of traveling to Kopan when Geshe Namdak was leading the November course, and we had an audience with Rinpoche, and we were able actually to share what's happening here, and to share the vision for the building, and to share some of the progress that we're making in the education. And Rinpoche was just beaming, absolutely beaming. So that was, really important to all of us. But we talk about 5 strategic priorities, and the number 1 priority is to care for our people. And that seems really obvious, doesn't it? It's like, of course, everyone wants to care for our people, but okay, concretely, how are we going to do it? And more concretely, how are we going to do it, as we evolve the building? And so this first one, a new home for resident volunteers, when we were talking about this project with the trustees, that bullet point actually became the focus of most of our conversation, because our resident volunteer, and a number of you were volunteer, have lived that, they live in cells, in the cell block, with very little ventilation and very little access to light. And, that's been the case for 25 years. And, it suited our purpose for many, many years, but longer term, it is not healthy for mental well-being. And we have a responsibility to do something about it. So it's been a challenge to even think about, but this project allows us to actually address that. The next one we talked about, creating a space for a monastic and a proper space for guests. At the moment, if you're, a guest, you have to, the only guest room we have is in Geshe Namdak's private quarters, so that doesn't really work. So we want to address that, having therefore a suitable home for our resident teacher that has privacy. And I know when I share that, it's really uncomfortable for Geshe Namdak because he will never ask for anything, but it's our responsibility to make sure that our resident teacher has the best possible conditions in which to, I was going to say be happy, but you're happy wherever you put you, but it's from our side. And, we talked about office space and education facilities. Yep. So this is, and I think Roy, last time we talked about this, he said, oh, wow, we've been talking about the basement for decades. So this is some of the plans. So on the left is the basement as it is, and they're architecture plans, so it's not very exciting necessarily, but we have a huge basement, and the huge basement is basically a storage facility. And so this would be actually doing the work and creating suitable, good quality. It's very spacious office space and meeting rooms and Zoom rooms for the team. A lot of our team work remotely. And so Venerable Wangyal and Paul and all our team members are always walking around with laptop trying to find quiet corners. So anyway, it's just creating suitable working environment so that we can actually support the work that's happening here. Yep, next slide. So this is the first floor. So this side is what we call the north wing. And basically it's the entire north wing would be, an accommodation. And so the first floor, so on the right, is what is, it's the building at the moment. So we've got offices, we've got bedrooms, and Geshe Namdak lives there, and I live up there as well, and, a guest room. So we would move all the resident volunteers. So for the first time in 25 years, they would have access to a window that opens where they can have real light and fresh air, and we would have enough room for 5, and then guest rooms. So when we have visiting teachers and so forth, there's somewhere really nice, really suitable where they can stay, which again at the moment we don't have. So that's for the first floor. Yeah, thank you. And so the top floor, we have a floor that's been rented out for the last 25 years. That's now been reappropriated by Jamyang. And so we would have our resident teacher flat up top, so, the most private area of the building. And then we would have our monastic up there as well. And each room would have its own little ensuite bathroom so that we can be gender flexible. We can have monks, we can have nuns sharing a space in a suitable way. So it gives us flexibility to, just be really open to welcoming different monastics of different genders. Yeah. Thank you. So the next priority, as we talked about it, is the sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, is financial sustainability, so expansion of the Lotus Guest House. So one of the things that happened during the pandemic when we shut down is when we reopened the guest house, we made it available on platforms like Airbnb and so forth. And that's been a real game changer for Jamyang, because there's a real hunger and an interest in as you know, London is an expensive city, and when you visit and you look for accommodation in London, it's very expensive. And so the accommodation is at a reasonable rate within London rates, but it also means you have somewhere beautiful and safe to stay. So people from all walks of life have been responding and booking and going, wow, what do you guys do and where is this? And so that's financially, that's really, really supported the center in a very important way. And so the idea would be to double the size of the guest house because we're moving the volunteers away. And the other one is environmental sustainability. So we've got gas boilers. Those of you who went through winter of 2018-19 may remember they died and then they were resuscitated, but they need to be replaced. And we're moving away from gas boilers. So with a heat pump and, and it's a massive investment because it's not just the heat source, it's all the engineering of the mechanical and engineering of the building. Yeah, next slide. So this is the guest house. This isn't very interesting, but it just shows you the top floor and the downstairs. And some of you may not have visited the guest house. And, I'm really, really happy to take people on tours and show you around. But basically, where are we? So this is the top floor. So this is what we have at the moment. We've got the 4 cells and a double room with a little ensuite bathroom. So that's 5 rooms. And with the conversion, we would basically double the size. So at the moment, this is where the volunteers live, and we would create 5 really nice rooms that have a little kitchen to share, shared bathroom. And so that entire cell block would be zoned as a guest house. Because again, at the moment, it's like the volunteers and the guests, they kind of share a space, which can be quite awkward. And that will make a big difference to Jamyang financially. And it's interesting because as a center director thinking about, the next director that's going to come along, it's like you're also leaving a model that is financially sustainable, that is more reliable, where you don't have to, worry and you can focus on education. You don't have to work so hard on trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills. You have a model that just functions and work and is reliable. And that's a huge deal for a Dharma center, huge deal for any organization, but it's a huge deal for a Dharma center. Yep, next. So the third priority is growing our education program, and in terms of what that means for the building, it's, we have space, a large room, tower room, and so forth that we've primarily been using for venue hire. And so those of you who know, it's a room that's kept really bare, and it's, for yoga, for this, for that. But the wish is to reappropriate that space for the needs of the education and to equip it as a proper hybrid space with the right equipment that could be divided into 2 rooms, where you can envision a Jamyang with multiple activities going on at separate in different spaces and multiple, hybrid classes and so forth. Because the reality is now we have a Sangha that has become international, and so how do we support students in classes or abroad? And we have 3 concurrent programs running at the moment, so that will help. Yeah, I think I've covered that. And so again, it's not very exciting, but so this is we're here, and so that's the tower room, which we would, have a partition that would divide, so it could have, basically two activities happen concurrently, simultaneously, and both, properly equipped. And the library does remain a library. There's so much discussion about the library. The library does remain a library. And we open up the library to access of the North Garden. So we have this beautiful garden that's being completely underutilized because it's really hard of access. So we would open up the access, and, we can talk about the vision for the North Garden. Yep. A fourth priority is community engagement. And we had a lot of conversation about that. Those who are really familiar with the FPMT may have heard about, the 5 pillars of the FPMT. And social services is one of the pillars of FPMT. And Jamyang has been so engaged for many, many years in being embedded in the local community and supporting the local community in a number of different ways through social services. And that's a commitment that we have, and we want to carry on, with that legacy. And so we're talking about, it's the community spaces and the North Guard of it. You can move to the next slide. The 5th one is promoting diversity and inclusivity. And we, if you receive our newsletter and you see, and, Kun Song is here tonight, so if you have an opportunity to connect with her, Kun Song is our Equality, Diversity, Inclusivity Coordinator, has done an amazing work and helped develop, affinity groups. And we have, Black and Curious About Buddhism group, we have Rainbow Sangha, and we have inclusivity ambassadors for our long-term programs. And so there's a lot of wonderful things going on. And the first item there, the welcome interest. So it seems so obvious, but of course, as part of a project like that is, okay, how do we make the building more open and welcoming to the outside community? So a friend of mine was visiting, and she was sitting on the little wall on the other side of the street, and she was looking at the door that was shut. And this is, a woman of a certain age, really mature and really confident. She was sitting and she was telling me, if I didn't know you, I don't know that I would want to actually ring the bell. And so it's that, glass doors and just opening it up so that people can feel really comfortable and feel comfortable walking in. And how do we help that, make that happen? And the last one is accessibility for all, which partly manifests as, again, as a lift. And again, that may seem like such a detail, but it's a sizable investment that takes a huge amount of courage to say this is important, and we want to do it, and we will do it. Yeah, next one. So in terms of the next step and where we're at, you can move on to this is the last slide. And I wanted to show that, it's really hard to see. Don't worry about the detail, but this is what I want to share. So we're discovering, as we're working with these architects, they divide the lifeline of a project in these stages. I think there are 5, 6, 7. I think there may be 9 in total, like the shamatha stages. But anyway, we're on level 2. We're on level 2. I think that's pretty appropriate, isn't it? So the board of trustees had this decision to make, where we had completed the first stage, which is basically we have a rough idea of what we want to do, and now we need to invest more with the engineers and et cetera, to prepare a proposal where we start engaging with Lambeth and the conservation officers, and it just goes on and on and on. So we've just approved moving forward for the second stage and hopefully the third stage, and so this will be about a year of development, and you'll see in an email, maybe if you see on Sunday, we're launching a new job opening for a development officer, which will be a full-time position, to have someone to come and be part of the team to help us with the fundraising and the fundraising strategy and so forth. But of course, and so it'll unfold from there. So we'll actually start talking about it and creating an event, and this is going to be a community-wide effort. It'll take us multiple years to accomplish, of course, and there's the financial side, but there's also the merit side. And so Geshe Namdak very kindly for a while now has also been guiding the community in terms of certain practices, and so a number of the holy objects that we've been getting. It's like, how do we also create merit as a community for a project like that to happen and manifest? And so those are also part of the conversation we'll be having with the community. But that's where we're at so far, and so you'll be hearing a lot more about this. Woo! Huh? And so before I pass on to Geshe-la, because Geshe-la will share a little bit about, you know, the education side and why all of this technical detail actually matters.